Channel Sports Central will be over a college football game preview and prediction on a big matchup coming up here in week 3 of this 2021 college football season. And it's going to be between the Oklahoma State Cowboys and the Boise State Broncos. Big matchup coming up here in week 3 for both of these teams. You got Oklahoma State on one side, kind of off to a slow start. I mean, they're 2-0, but they've had 2 close matchups against teams that they should be blowing out right now. And as for Boise State, on the flip side, Boise State did take a loss against UCF previously in this season, but overall they tried to bounce back last week against UTEP, and they did. So overall, should be an interesting matchup coming up here in Boise in week 3. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with your team trends. Last game for Oklahoma State, they beat Tulsa 28-23, but the thing is about Tulsa, this is a very different Tulsa team in comparison to last season. I mean, Tulsa doesn't look to be anywhere near as good of a football team in 2021 as they were in 2020. I mean, they lost to an FCS team. Tulsa did in week 1. So, I mean, that game should not have been very close, but it was close. 28-23 was the final score. Oklahoma State did get the win, but overall, it should not have been that close. Oklahoma State also had a game in week 1 that should not have been very close. So that is something to watch out for heading into this matchup here, is that the Cowboys have had a couple of close matchups against teams they probably should be beating by at least a couple of touchdowns. But still, I mean, 2-0, a win's a win, I suppose. So Oklahoma State is off to a good start there. Boise State, they beat UTEP last week, 54-13. They're 1-1. They did lose to UCF the week before. So you do got to keep that in mind. But overall, Boise State is still a pretty talented football team. Games to be on Saturday, September 18th in Boise, 6 p.m. Pacific time. Line currently says Boise State by 4.5, so the Broncos are actually favored here by a decent margin. ESPN FPI is going to Boise State 66%. Over-under is 57 in this matchup. We've only seen these teams play once before. That was back in 2018 when Oklahoma State won it. So the Cowboys do lead the series here 1-0. So obviously the win streak is 1 for Oklahoma State. So this is only the second matchup in the history of Oklahoma State and Boise State, but it has been recently the last time that we saw these teams play each other, which was back in 2018. So makes it even more of an intriguing matchup just because these teams really haven't played each other a whole lot. Stat comparison for this matchup: Oklahoma State, these are your 2021 current stats, so these are your average stats over the past 2 games. Oklahoma State's got 25 points on average, 19 points allowed, 244 pass yards a game, so the passing game hasn't been terrible for Oklahoma State. 97 rush yards on average, and then you got 229 pass yards allowed and 112 rush yards allowed on average per game. As for Boise State, 42 points per game, 24 points allowed, 301 pass yards, pretty good stat line there for the Broncos there, with 301 average pass yards, 70 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 275 passing, 179 on the rushing side. Some key points for this one: obviously Oklahoma State is 2-0. Questionable first 2 games for the Cowboys, obviously. I mean, even if you're an Oklahoma State fan or not, I think we all can agree that Oklahoma State should have won their first 2 games by much larger margins than they did. But still, it is still a good thing that Oklahoma State did win those games, or else it'd be a much different situation right now for the Cowboys. But yeah, plenty of talent on both sides of the ball. I mean, Oklahoma State's got potential. Spencer Sanders obviously has been in a tough situation with COVID protocols, it looks like. But yeah, Oklahoma State, they need to get a quick start in this one for sure if you're going to shut down Boise State. I mean, Boise State is a very interesting team in the fact that they're a big sleeper team, and that's something you got to watch out for. They're in the Mountain West, and they're always one of the best teams in the Mountain West Conference. And overall, I think Boise State should not be underestimated in this matchup by Oklahoma State. I mean, it's usually a tougher place to play. Boise State plays pretty well at home. And also, I mean, if you look at Boise State here, this is still a pretty talented football team, even though they did lose to UCF previously in week 1. But overall, I mean, once again, for Boise State, solid win against UTEP last week. They've got the home field advantage, and Khalil Shakir, watch out for him. He's a receiver for this team. Big standout so far. He's put up some great stats, over 200 yards. I believe around 250 yards, if I'm right, in the past 2 games. So he's played pretty well for Boise State so far. He will definitely be a tough player to cover for Oklahoma State in this matchup. But that being said, let's get to my prediction here. I mean, Oklahoma State is a good football team. I'm going to give this game to Boise State, though. I think Boise State comes into this matchup ready to go. They're at home in this matchup. I think that they actually get the win here. Oklahoma State is a Power 5 team, which you may say that's going to give them the win. It's just because they got more talent overall than Boise State. But Broncos are a good football team. This is a Boise State team that is at home in this matchup. They played pretty well last week against UTEP, even though they lost their first matchup against UCF. I think they've learned from that loss, and I think that Boise State is going to be ready to go in this matchup, and they'll get the win 27-24. It's going to be close, and I think we could easily see either team win this matchup. I mean, I think Oklahoma State, I'm kind of surprised Oklahoma State isn't favored in this matchup according to the spread, but I'm going to go Boise State 27-24 in this matchup. Probability 55% towards Boise. So I'm really not too confident that we see the Broncos win this matchup, obviously, but I mean, I do think it's going to be very close. I'm going to say that it's going to be under as well, the 57. So I'm taking the under in this matchup. I think we see more of a defensive game here. But once again, I think Boise State is just the better football team as of right now. 27-24 is going to be the final score. And Oklahoma State, I mean, if they win this matchup, that'd be huge for them. And I mean, if you look at Oklahoma State's first couple of games, once again, it's been a little bit concerning how close their games have been against two pretty poor opponents. So, but yeah, it's going to be 27-24. That's my prediction for this matchup. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this game, though. I do appreciate you guys all watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll see you later.